Lara. Thank you for joining us. You know, when I read through the different pieces of key evidence expected by the prosecution, knowing that the judge said we're not going to throw out his entire confession and everything learned as a result of that, but rather limited portions, it sounds like the prosecution has a good case.
I agree with you. It sounds like a good case. It would not have been a good case if they didn't have the blood in the trunk, but that really connects him to the crime. I mean, the defense could have argued, hey, this is a coerced statement. Look, he doesn't remember parts of it. That means they're planting all of this into his mind, and he's just telling him whatever they want. And the fact that he took him to the cornfield is because probably the investigators or the detectives planted that in his head. They keep on asking him grueling questioning for many, many, many hours, sleepless hours. English is not his first language. He speaks Spanish. So, they could have the defense could have raised some issues with that statement. But when there's forensic evidence, that's when you start having issues. Now, I don't know how solid the forensic evidence is, but from what I heard is that her blood was in his trunk. That means at some point he was definitely involved. He had the body in the trunk or something related to her blood was in the trunk. That in itself, I think, is very strong evidence.
Yeah, and that in conjunction with the case, and I didn't mean to interrupt you, I was just going to say in conjunction with that, the fact that he did lead the investigators to her body in the cornfield, I guess without other forensic evidence, you could say, well, he just stumbled upon her, knew where she was, and wanted to get the police to her, and he was afraid to report it. Let's talk about one other issue, or is this an issue? I value your expertise as a criminal defense attorney. So my question is this: does it make a difference that he is undocumented in terms of criminal charges against him and being sentenced here in the United States?
As far as the case itself, the criminal case, it shouldn't make a difference. At least I know in California, it's not something that can be used in a trial in any way, in a negative way. Will it have any impact on his status? Of course. I mean, he could be, if convicted of the charge, I wouldn't be surprised if even after he does his time, if he's deported, or he at least goes through the proceedings and has to face an immigration judge who's going to decide his fate as far as his status in this country.
I know one of the things we've talked about on Court TV is the fact that, this is the scariest kind of crime because by all accounts, he didn't know Mollie Tibbets. He didn't have a relationship with her or go to school with her or know her from class or be a relative. All these things, typically we know statistically most victims of violent crimes like this actually know the person that does it to them. In this case, how much do you think that will influence the jury or create even more passion, if that's the right word, in the jury, knowing that she didn't know this guy? He just randomly picked her if, in fact, they convict him.
I think it could cut both ways. If this is a situation where this Mollie didn't know this man, I mean, you can only imagine what a jury, how they're going to feel. They're going to relate to her. A stranger is stalking her out of nowhere as she's jogging. And eventually her body is found, and he leads the officers to the cornfield. I mean, no matter what defense he puts out there, if he puts out self-defense, what business did he have stalking this woman, right? So he's going to have real trouble, and the jury is going to get really upset. It's just scary. Anyone who tries to relate to what's happening here, it's that random thing. The randomness of it is scarier. That means, is there something psychologically wrong with this individual? Is he a psychopath? Why is it that he did what he did, if he in fact did it? It just brings more emotion and more fear into the picture and makes a jury more likely to convict. At the same time, though, if you look at it from the other way, from the other side, the defense can argue that there's no motive here. Why would he kill her? For no reason. And what evidence is there that he is a psychopath or he did it for some strange? It gives him the opportunity to maybe argue that something else happened. Maybe someone else showed up. I mean, he's blocked his memory. Something must have happened. Maybe someone hit him and he lost consciousness. I have no idea what they're going to be saying because obviously they've got access to the facts, at least their client's version, and they know more than any of us do. So they could come up with all sorts of theories to distance him from the crime, despite the fact that there was blood in his trunk and he was able to lead prosecutors. He may have been a victim himself, or he may have witnessed something and he's blocked part of it.
And Laura, you raised a really good point, and that is if he chooses to point the finger at other suspects. Tell us evidence-wise, if you're the defense attorney in this case, are you going to bring in the fact that there were 4 prior suspects that law enforcement looked into before they landed on this particular suspect who's now the defendant?
You're definitely going to make a motion. You're going to do everything possible to bring those. I mean, think about it. We're talking about reasonable doubt here. You want to raise reasonable doubt. I mean, yes, the defense doesn't have to prove anything, but the idea that there were 4 other suspects, that's pretty strong, and that's enough a lot of times to raise that reasonable doubt, to have enough reasonable doubt to get the man acquitted.
Yeah, you're right. I don't disagree with you. You're going to stay with us. That trial, again, is in jury selection. We expect to continue reporting out on how the jury selection is going, but on Wednesday morning, they are expecting opening statements.